Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a story so legendary, it almost feels like myth. Mark Antony, the formidable Roman general, and Cleopatra VII, Egypt's last active pharaoh.
Mhm.
Their lives were just this whirlwind of romance, intense strategic alliances, and, well, the brutal, bloody birth of the Roman Empire. It's crafted one of history's really captivating narratives.
Absolutely. A story for the ages.
Yet despite their immense historical significance, and, ancient accounts actually confirming they were buried together, the precise location of their tomb remains one of antiquity's most enduring and, frankly, compelling unsolved archaeological puzzles.
It really is.
We're going into the full story today, start to finish, all the mysteries included.
It's truly a saga that really transcends time, doesn't it? We're talking about figures whose power, their passions, and their eventual downfall directly influenced the shaping of the ancient world as we know it.
Definitely.
Their story has been romanticized, reimagined for centuries. But beneath the legend, it's rooted in these incredibly complex historical realities and some seriously shrewd political maneuvering. And the enduring mystery of their final resting place. Well, it continues to drive intensive search efforts and, lots of scholarly debate even today.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to take a complete deep dive into this whole narrative. We'll explore not just their dramatic lives and equally dramatic deaths, but also the multifaceted reasons for the tomb's disappearance.
Right. Why can't we find it?
Exactly. And the cutting-edge archaeological quest that's still underway to try and find it will unpack the raw historical context, the precise, often quite heartbreaking circumstances of their suicides, the ancient accounts of their burial, and then critically, we'll examine the leading theories and the very latest discoveries that, keep that hope alive.
And this isn't simply about locating a lost tomb, though that would be, well, amazing. If we connect this to the bigger picture, is a story about the raw exercise of power, the insidious nature of propaganda, the very shaping of historical narratives,
Yeah.
and that enduring human quest for knowledge that drives us to look back. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a shortcut to being exceptionally well-informed about a pivotal moment in ancient history.
And hopefully understand, perhaps more deeply than before, how history itself is continually being rewritten, sometimes by just one single archaeological find.
Precisely. It shows history isn't static.
That's a perfect framing. Okay, let's unpack this then. To truly understand why their tomb is such a monumental mystery, why it vanished so completely, we have to go back to the volatile period that defined their lives.
Yeah, we need context.
We're talking about the twilight of an empire, a truly doomed alliance forged in the fires of Roman civil war.
Indeed. The political crucible of their era was the late Roman Republic, specifically the chaotic aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination back in 44 BC.
A huge moment.
His murder plunged Rome into this power vacuum and a brutal series of civil wars. This led, as you might recall, to the formation of the Second Triumvirate,
Right, the three big guys.
an uneasy alliance between Mark Antony Octavian, who was Caesar's adopted heir, and the often overlooked but initially crucial Lepidus.
Lepidus always gets forgotten.
He does. But as history repeatedly shows, such shared power, well, it rarely lasts. Almost inevitably, this triumvirate soon devolved into a bitter and relentless power struggle, primarily between Antony and Octavian, each vying for sole control of the Roman world.
And right in the very eye of this Roman storm was Cleopatra VII. She wasn't just any queen, was she? I mean, she was a truly formidable leader.
Oh, absolutely.
Renowned not just for her legendary charisma and intelligence, but for a political acumen that rivaled any Roman general or senator. Her primary objective, above all else, was to safeguard Egypt's immense wealth.
The breadbasket of Rome.
Exactly. Its literal breadbasket status as Rome's grain supplier, and to maintain its independence amidst Rome's relentless, almost insatiable expansion. Egypt was always this jewel, always a target.
Exactly right. Her alliances, therefore, were incredibly strategic, a really delicate dance in a very dangerous world. She first allied herself with Julius Caesar, using their personal connection, to solidify her power.
And they had a son.
Yes, with Caesar she had a son, Caesarion, who she hoped would secure her dynasty's future. After Caesar's assassination, she then crucially shifted her allegiance to Mark Antony,
The next strong man.
seeing him as the strongest contender and, frankly, the best bet for Egypt's survival. Her rule was a masterclass in astute political maneuvering. She didn't just rule, she cultivated her image meticulously.
Oh, so?
Well, she famously reduced taxes for the Egyptian people to gain public favor, demonstrating a keen understanding of popular sentiment. And perhaps most significantly, she adopted the persona of the goddess Isis.
Aligning herself with the divine.
Precisely. All with the clear aim of securing Egypt's influence and reinforcing her own absolute authority in the eyes of her subjects and, indeed, the Romans. She was a ruler playing a very, very long game.
And this brings us to what I find truly fascinating and deeply relevant to our understanding of how power works even today. The propaganda war that Octavian launched against Antony.
Oh, Octavian was a master.
A PR genius. He weaponized Antony's actions against him with surgical precision. He heavily leveraged the controversial donations of Alexandria in 34 BC. Can you elaborate on why that particular event was such a scandalous bombshell for the Roman public?
That's a fantastic question. The donations of Alexandria were pure political dynamite. I mean, imagine Antony, a Roman general, not just granting Roman territories in the East Lands won by Roman blood and treasure to Cleopatra's children,
Giving away parts of the empire?
essentially, but then crowning her Queen of Kings in this lavish, overtly Egyptian ceremony. This wasn't just a political misstep. It felt like an act designed to scandalize.
How did Romans see it?
For conservative Romans, it suggested Antony had gone native, that he was abandoning Roman values for an Oriental despotism led by this ambitious foreign queen. It was a direct affront to Roman tradition and, more importantly, to Octavian's own perceived authority.
And then came the divorce.
Right. And when Antony then officially divorced Octavian's sister Octavia in 32 BC, that was the final unforgivable straw. It cemented Octavian's narrative. Antony wasn't just losing his way. He was a threat to Rome itself, corrupted by Cleopatra.
And Octavian, ever the strategist, used this outrage to his absolute advantage. He tactically convinced the Roman Senate to declare war directly on Cleopatra rather than on Antony. Why was that distinction so crucial?
It was pure genius, really. Declaring war on Antony, a Roman citizen and a powerful general with legions loyal to him, carried the very real risk of sparking a civil war.
Roman against Roman.
Exactly. That might have seen Roman fighting Roman, potentially leading to widespread mutiny among his own forces. By declaring war on Cleopatra, the foreign queen, Octavian circumvented this.
Clever framing.
He framed it as a defensive war to protect Rome from an external threat, an exotic enemy who had seduced a Roman leader and was now threatening the very fabric of the Republic. This not only rallied Roman patriotism, but also made it easier for Antony's own soldiers to defect to Octavian's side without feeling like traitors to Rome.
Wow.
This highlights, for you listening, how political narratives were manipulated even in ancient times to achieve strategic goals. It's a timeless lesson in political spin, and Octavian, well, he practically wrote the textbook.
That's incredibly insightful. And all of this political maneuvering, all this strategic manipulation, inevitably had to reach a flashpoint, didn't it? Which brings us to the actual military showdown.
Absolutely, and it built to a crushing crescendo, culminating in the pivotal naval battle of Actium on September 12, 31 BC.
The big one.
This wasn't just a skirmish. It was a massive, decisive engagement off the coast of Greece, a true clash of titans with hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of men. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Control of the entire Roman world.
And the outcome was brutal and utterly decisive for Antony and Cleopatra. Octavian's fleet, commanded by his brilliant and often underestimated naval genius, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa.
Agrippa was key.
He delivered a crushing defeat to their combined forces. It wasn't just a loss. It sealed their fate.
They retreated to Alexandria, Egypt, facing an incredibly uncertain future. Octavian's forces were on their heels, besieging the city, methodically closing in.
Oh, where to run.
And one by one, their remaining allies, seeing the writing on the wall, seeing the inevitable collapse, began to defect to Octavian's side. The net was closing in, leaving them isolated and cornered.
Then came Antony's desperate final days, days that are so dramatic they almost defy belief, and which truly set the stage for the mystery of their tomb. On August 30 BC, with Octavian at the gates, Antony made one last desperate attempt to engage Octavian's forces outside Alexandria, trying to break the siege.
But it was futile, a last desperate gamble that completely failed. His own fleet and cavalry, demoralized and seeing the futility of continued resistance, betrayed him. They joined Octavian's side.
Unbelievable.
Antony was forced to retreat, shattered to the palace, his world just collapsing around him. It's hard to imagine the despair he must have felt in that moment.
And here's where it gets really interesting and heartbreaking because a critical miscommunication unfolded. Cleopatra, having withdrawn to a quickly constructed two-story mausoleum on her palace grounds, a mausoleum that would become their final resting place.
The place we're looking for.
Exactly. She sent a message to Antony. She knew Octavian wanted her alive for his triumph, and she was trying to protect herself and the vast royal treasures she'd amassed. So she sent word, maybe hoping to elicit a desperate rescue attempt, suggesting she had died by suicide. But the message was tragically misinterpreted.
Yeah, upon receiving this false report, Antony was plunged into utter despair. He cried out, and it's a line that just cuts through history with its raw agony. Well, then why wait longer? Fate has taken away the only thing for which I could say I still wanted to live.
Devastating.
He then ordered his loyal slave, Eros, to kill him. It was the Roman soldier's final act, to fall on his own sword rather than face capture.
And Eros instead bravely turned the sword on himself, choosing death over betraying his master. Antony, witnessing Eros's courage, picked up the dripping sword and plunged it into his own body.
But in a final twist of agonizing fate, the wound wasn't immediately fatal. He lay there groaning, struggling, bleeding out.
Oh, the agony.
Still alive in unimaginable pain, he then learned Cleopatra was actually alive.
Yeah.
In his final, desperate wish, he had himself carried to Cleopatra's mausoleum. The doors were bolted, locked from within.
So how did he get in?
So he had to be agonizingly hauled up through an upper window, using ropes, still clinging to life. He died there in Cleopatra's arms, exchanging final words of love and advice, urging her not to trust Octavian.
Wow.
It's truly a dramatic and heartbreaking end to a life defined by power and passion. Dying in the arms of the woman he loved after such a tragic, avoidable misunderstanding. This scene alone is why their story has captivated generations.
That imagery of him being hauled up to her through that window to die in her arms, it's a scene ripped from a Greek tragedy, isn't it? A brutal, almost unbelievable image.
It really is.
And it sets such a dramatic, heart-wrenching stage for her own calculated demise.
In Cleopatra's own motivations for suicide, which occurred on August 10, 30 BC, just 9 days after Antony's death, were driven by an unwavering, almost pharaonic determination.
She wouldn't be captured.
She was absolutely resolved to avoid the ultimate humiliation of being paraded as a prisoner in Octavian's Roman triumph, a public spectacle that would have been a profound desecration of her royal dignity. It was the fate her half-sister Arsinoe had endured.
She had seen it happen.
And Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, was determined to avoid it at all costs.
Beyond that profound desire to protect her dignity, she also sought to protect the vast royal treasures she had collected within her mausoleum. Octavian was keenly aware of this immense wealth and was desperate to seize it for his soldiers' pay.
Right. Deny him the spoils. She wanted to deny him that easy victory. This brings us to one of the most persistent and widely believed myths surrounding her death. The popular belief, depicted endlessly in art and popular culture, that Cleopatra died from the bite of an asp, an Egyptian cobra.
The snake and the fig story.
Exactly. It's romantic, it's exotic, but it's, well, likely fiction.
But if we dig a little deeper, you quickly start to see the cracks in that narrative. Roman-era writers like Strabo, Plutarch, and Cassius Dio, while mentioning the asp as a possibility, also present alternatives.
What do they suggest?
They suggest she might have used a toxic ointment or introduced poison with a sharp implement, like a hairpin. They were clearly not entirely convinced by the snake story themselves, even back then.
And crucially, Cleopatra's personal physician, Olympos, whose account Plutarch utilized, made no mention of an asp as the cause of death. None.
That's significant.
Furthermore, modern scholarship only further highlights the implausibility. The Egyptian cobra, the asp, is over 2 meters long, not something you could easily conceal in a basket of figs.
Right, it's huge.
Its bite is rarely fatal and takes hours to kill, often with violent symptoms, which doesn't fit the peaceful death described. And perhaps most tellingly, no snake was ever found at the scene, despite guards thoroughly searching for one.
And Cleopatra was renowned as an expert on poisons. She had likely experimented with them throughout her life for various purposes. She would undoubtedly have chosen a more certain, more swift, and less messy form of death than an asp bite.
Absolutely. This discrepancy between popular belief and historical accounts points directly to a deliberate shaping of the narrative, a grand act of ancient spin.
So who spun it?
Well, what's fascinating here is Octavian's reaction. He was reportedly outraged by Cleopatra's suicide as it robbed him of the full splendor of his victory by denying him the spectacle of parading her, the ultimate prize, in his Roman triumph. He needed that grand finale for his monumental victory.
He needed the show.
He did. So, To salvage the dramatic impact of his triumph and create a suitably memorable, sensational end for his formidable foe,
Yeah.
Octavian actively popularized the asp tale.
He pushed the snake story.
He even went so far as to present an effigy as Cleopatra with an asp clinging to her during his triumph in 29 BC. It was a propaganda masterstroke. He shaped the narrative and, well, it stuck for 2 millennia.
Wow, that's incredible spin control.
This dramatic divergence between popular belief and what the historical sources subtly suggest highlights how historical narratives, particularly those compiled by the victors generations after the events, can be deliberately shaped by political agendas and propaganda to serve specific purposes.
Makes sense.
The asp myth, despite its factual weaknesses, provided a dramatic, exotic, and culturally resonant narrative that fit Octavian's desire to portray his victory as absolute and his enemy's demise as fittingly sensational, almost like divine judgment. That political utility explains its enduring power in popular culture. It was simply a better story, and Octavian knew it.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just what happened, it's often about who wrote what happened. When Cleopatra was discovered, she was found lifeless on a golden couch with her 2 loyal handmaidens, Iris and Charmian, dead or dying beside her,
Loyal to the very end.
suggesting they too took their own lives to avoid slavery. She was only 39 years old and had ruled Egypt for over 2 decades.
This raises an important question for you, our listener, to consider. What does this reveal about the power of storytelling, and how much of what we accept as history might be colored, intentionally or unintentionally, by the victors, by the prevailing political winds?
Yeah, good question.
The debate among modern scholars continues regarding whether her death was a forced suicide, compelled by Octavian, or even a murder orchestrated by him, a convenient end to a deeply inconvenient problem. We may never know for sure.
Which makes the very circumstances of their death, and therefore their burial, another layer of mystery in this fascinating story. Because despite everything, despite all the propaganda and his triumph, Octavian made a surprising, almost generous decision regarding their burial.
He did. Despite his initial desire to parade Cleopatra in his Roman triumph as the ultimate symbol of his victory, something that would have been deeply humiliating for her and symbolically significant for Rome, he ultimately permitted Antony and Cleopatra to be buried together.
Why was that so significant?
This decision held particular weight because Antony, in his final moments, had explicitly stated his wish to be interred with Cleopatra in Alexandria rather than in Rome, a desire that had previously inflamed the Roman Senate and directly contributed to the declaration of war against Cleopatra. It was a remarkable concession.
And the ancient confirmation for this is surprisingly clear. Plutarch states that Octavian ordered Cleopatra's body should be buried with that of Antony in splendid and regal fashion.
Splendid and regal, not just hidden away.
Exactly. And Cassius Dio further confirms they were both embalmed in the same fashion and buried in the same tomb. This wasn't just a quiet burial, it was a state affair, a public recognition of their combined royal and military status, even in defeat.
Even Cleopatra's fiercely loyal handmaidens, Iris and Charmian, who died alongside her, were granted proper burials by Octavian. This indicates either a surprising degree of respect for the deceased, a recognition of their unwavering loyalty, or perhaps a pragmatic move.
Pragmatic how?
Well, maybe to avoid further unrest from accusations of sacrilege in Alexandria. Octavian was astute enough to know when to temper his triumph with a gesture of clemency. Appease the locals, perhaps.
Makes sense. Prior to her death, as we touched on, Cleopatra had rapidly constructed a 2-story mausoleum within her palace grounds in Alexandria. This wasn't just any building. It was strategically located right next to a prominent temple dedicated to the goddess Isis,
Her patron deity.
with whom Cleopatra strongly identified, even adopting the goddess's persona in public ceremonies. It was a symbolic as much as a physical location for her.
And this grand mausoleum served a critical dual purpose. It was intended as the final resting place for both herself and Antony, a shared sanctuary in death. But it was also designed to house an immense collection of royal treasures. Vast quantities of gold, silver, dazzling emeralds, lustrous pearls, exotic ebony, precious ivory, fragrant cinnamon.
All the riches of Egypt?
Along with torchwood and tow, which suggests maybe she planned to burn it all. Octavian was acutely aware of this vast wealth and was deeply concerned that Cleopatra might destroy it rather than allow it to fall into his hands, as his soldiers desperately needed pay depended on it. Imagine the tension as he negotiated for its surrender.
High-stakes negotiation. Ancient sources describe the mausoleum as surpassingly lofty and beautiful, almost a wonder in itself. Cassius Dio even notes that its upper part next to the roof was not yet fully completed at the time of Cleopatra's death,
Wow, so they were still working on it.
suggesting the immense haste of its construction in the face of Octavian's relentless advance. Cleopatra took refuge in this mausoleum during her final days, using its upper windows to communicate with those outside, including Antony in his agonizing dying moments. It was her final stronghold, her treasury, and her planned tomb, all in one.
The fate of Antony and Cleopatra's children also reflects Octavian's comprehensive and often ruthless strategic consolidation of power. He ensured the swift elimination of Caesarion, Cleopatra's son, with Julius Caesar.
Why him specifically?
Caesarion, as the only biological son of Caesar, posed a direct and dangerous potential rival heir to Caesar's legacy, and by extension, to Octavian's claim to power. He was simply too great a threat to be allowed to live. Can't have two sons of Caesar running around.
True. But interestingly, Antony and Cleopatra's three children, Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selina II, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, were spared. They were taken to Rome and raised as Roman citizens, educated and assimilated into Roman society.
This was a very strategic move by Octavian, wasn't it? It wasn't mercy so much as foresight.
Well, explain that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It was a masterstroke designed to integrate the Ptolemaic royal line directly into the Roman system, and, crucially, to prevent any future claims to the Egyptian throne from within the family.
Neutralize them politically.
Exactly. By taking them to Rome, raising them as Romans, and eventually marrying Cleopatra Selene to a loyal client king, Octavian effectively nullified their potential as symbols of Egyptian independence. It solidified Rome's control over Egypt, not just through military victory, but also through managing the legacy and heirs of his defeated rivals, ensuring no phoenix would rise from the ashes of the Ptolemaic dynasty.
So, given all this clear historical evidence, the accounts of their death, and the mandate for their burial, why then does the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra remain such an elusive, profound mystery? Why hasn't it been found?
That's truly the core question, isn't it? The primary challenge lies in the sheer ravages of time and nature, particularly the devastating earthquakes and tsunamis that struck ancient Alexandria.
Nature taking its course.
Ancient historical accounts consistently place Cleopatra's palace and mausoleum squarely in the royal district, specifically on the island of Antiochos, a small islet within the city's harbor.
And then came the cataclysm of 365 AD. A truly massive earthquake and tsunami struck the coast with incredible force, causing significant portions of the ancient city, including the entire royal quarters and Antiochos Island, to subside.
Sink beneath the waves.
And become submerged several meters beneath the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, imagine an entire section of, say, Manhattan just sinking into the ocean overnight. This physical transformation immediately rendered traditional land-based archaeological methods obsolete for much of the ancient city, literally burying it under the waves.
This catastrophic event necessitated the development of highly specialized, incredibly expensive, and logistically complex underwater archaeology. The deep water, often poor visibility, strong currents, and dynamic sediment movement inherent to submerged sites present formidable barriers to discovery and excavation.
Yeah, can you imagine the frustration for archaeologists knowing something priceless might be preserved just meters below, but incredibly difficult, almost impossible to reach? It's like looking through frosted glass at a treasure chest.
It's a true paradox, isn't it? Because the very act of submergence can paradoxically act as an incredible protective layer, shielding archaeological sites and their contents from atmospheric degradation, erosion, and, importantly, the extensive land-based looting that plagued so many other ancient Egyptian tombs.
So the water protects it.
Yet it simultaneously creates an almost insurmountable barrier to discovery, preserving it in an almost unreachable watery tomb.
Beyond natural disasters, the relentless impact of looting and historical disruption has significantly contributed to the tomb's elusiveness. Ancient Egyptian tombs, particularly those of prominent pharaohs and royalty, were frequently targeted and plundered over centuries, often shortly after burial.
King Tut's tomb was the exception, not the rule.
Exactly. The exceptional preservation of King Tutankhamun's tomb is a rare anomaly precisely because it remained largely untouched, a genuine miracle.
So it's highly probable that even if Cleopatra's tomb were found today, it would likely have been severely looted, its contents scattered or destroyed, making definitive identification and study incredibly challenging.
And remember, Octavian himself, acutely aware of the immense wealth Cleopatra had amassed in her mausoleum, likely ensured much of it was removed shortly after her death to pay his victorious soldiers.
Right, he took the treasure first.
draining it of its immediate value and making it less of a target for future plunderers, perhaps.
Furthermore, political upheavals and successive changes in rule in Egypt, from Roman to Byzantine to Arab periods, contributed to the neglect, destruction, or repurposing of ancient structures and burial sites. As new powers rose, old ones were dismantled, leading to the gradual loss of historical memory regarding specific locations.
People just forgot where it was.
Especially for a tomb that perhaps had already been plundered and lost its obvious markers.
And finally, there's the frustrating scarcity of definitive primary evidence regarding the tomb's exact location. While ancient historians like Plutarch and Cassius Dio confirm the joint burial and describe Cleopatra's mausoleum as surpassingly lofty and beautiful,
Sound amazing.
they provide remarkably little specific information about its precise geographical coordinates.
No GPS back then. References are vague, placing it generally near a temple of Isis, or simply within the royal grounds of Alexandria.
Not very helpful for finding it today.
And, frustratingly, very little archaeological material directly related to Cleopatra has survived that could offer clues. Most of it consists of coins issued during her reign, which give us a sense of her image, but not her burial site. This scarcity of contemporary, direct archaeological or textual evidence makes pinpointing the exact site an incredibly challenging endeavor, a true needle in a very large submerged haystack.
Which brings us to the ongoing quest for the tomb, a real-life Indiana Jones story with competing theories and recent discoveries that keep the hope alive against all odds. The first major theory, the Alexandria hypothesis, posits that the tomb, along with the rest of Cleopatra's palace, lies within the submerged royal quarters of ancient Alexandria.
This is Francadillo's work, right?
Exactly. Its key proponent is the renowned French marine archaeologist Franck Gardiot and his team. They've dedicated decades to extensive geophysical surveys and meticulous excavations in Alexandria's eastern harbor.
Following the ancient clues.
Their work is meticulously guided by ancient descriptions from the Greek geographer Strabo, who precisely placed Cleopatra's palace on Antiochus Island, and Plutarch's account placing her tomb near a temple of Isis.
They are essentially following ancient maps, albeit submerged ones.
And their efforts have truly paid off in spectacular fashion. Gaudio successfully located the submerged island of Antiochus itself, along with the undeniable remains of Cleopatra's royal palace and a temple of Isis nearby.
So the palace is there.
Right. So their leading theory, based on compelling evidence, is that Cleopatra's mausoleum is located somewhere on that submerged Antiochus island, specifically situated between the palace ruins and the Isis temple. It's incredibly precise work.
What have they actually found down there?
They've made some truly incredible finds that speak to the grandeur of the Ptolemaic era. Colossal statues, beautifully inscribed slabs, significant architectural elements, and even a bust believed to be of Caesarion, Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar.
Wow, Caesarion's bust. They also found a sphinx representing Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra's father, solidifying the royal connections. However, working on these underwater sites is, as you can imagine, incredibly difficult.
Yeah, the challenges must be immense.
They face extreme access difficulties, constant hazards for divers, limited bottom time due to pressure, poor visibility, strong currents, and dynamic sediment movement that constantly shifts and reburies findings.
The sheer scale of the submerged ruins in Alexandria, over 5.5 acres with layers of massive, collapsed blocks, presents immense logistical and mapping challenges, requiring sophisticated sonar and 3D modeling techniques just to navigate. Plus, any artifacts recovered from underwater environments require highly specialized and incredibly costly conservation methods due to their fragile, waterlogged state. It's a monumental effort just to touch these pieces of history.
This leads us to the second prominent and increasingly discussed theory, the Taposiris Magna hypothesis, spearheaded by the remarkable Kathleen Martinez.
The lawyer turned archaeologist.
Exactly. She's a Dominican defense lawyer who, driven by this unwavering conviction, transitioned into archaeology, and she's been leading excavations at the Temple of Taposiris Magna, about 45 kilometers west of Alexandria, for nearly 2 decades now. Her tenacity is legendary in the field.
Her central hypothesis is rooted in Cleopatra's strong, almost spiritual identification with the goddess Isis and her desire to symbolically reenact the legend of Isis and Osiris, the mythical divine couple of ancient Egypt, believing this would grant immortality.
Okay, so a religious motivation for the location.
That's the idea. Taposiris Magna, crucially, means Great Tomb of Osiris, and Martinez sees it as a profoundly spiritually significant location for such a ritualistic burial, a place where Cleopatra, as the living Isis, would want to be reunited with her Osiris Antony.
Martinez posits that Cleopatra might have chosen this site, away from the capital, for a secret, more sacred burial, protecting her and Antony's remains from Roman desecration after Octavian's departure. And her team has made some truly remarkable discoveries that, while not definitive, certainly support the intriguing possibility of a high-status burial there.
Like what? What have they found?
In 2022, for instance, they discovered a significant 1,300-meter-long tunnel carved deep into bedrock beneath the temple complex, which some have called an engineering marvel.
A huge tunnel. What's inside?
Well, ground-penetrating radar further reveals potential hidden rooms and chambers within it. They've also unearthed hundreds of bronze and silver coins bearing Cleopatra's profile, directly linking the site to her reign.
Okay, that's a definite link.
And perhaps most tantalizingly, an alabaster bust of a royal woman wearing a diadem, which Martinez believes is Cleopatra VII, and a limestone bust of a king, possibly Mark Antony.
Possibly. But is it confirmed?
It's important to note on those busts that there are different expert opinions on their exact identification. Archaeology is full of healthy debate, after all. But beyond that, excavations have revealed 27 tombs within the temple's vicinity,
Other tombs nearby.
including 10 mummies of Egyptian nobles and 2 mummies covered in gold leaf with golden tongues, which was a specific ritual meant to enable speech in the afterlife, strongly suggesting high-status burials, indicating royal connections.
Golden tongues, wow.
And they found foundation deposits laid by Ptolemy IV, Cleopatra's great-great-great-grandfather, providing the first direct link between the temple site and Cleopatra's immediate family line.
So her family built there.
Right. Other artifacts like ritual pottery, oil lamps, cosmetic containers, and bronze statues also consistently date the temple's construction and significant use to the 1st century BCE, putting it squarely in Cleopatra's era and under her family's influence.
Despite these intriguing finds, Martinez's hypothesis initially faced significant skepticism from many traditional archaeologists, including the prominent Egyptologist Zahi Hawass.
What was his objection?
He initially stated quite firmly that the Egyptians never buried inside a temple, making Martinez's theory historically unlikely in his view. Hawass also publicly denied news stories about an imminent discovery attributed to him, navigating the immense public pressure for such a monumental find.
But hasn't his view changed somewhat?
However, Hawass's stance has definitely evolved over the years. In 2019, he expressed a more optimistic, albeit still cautious, view, stating he hopes to find the tombs soon at Taposiris Magna and believes they are so close.
Interesting shift.
This dynamic illustrates that archaeology is not a purely objective science. It is deeply influenced by human factors, including the tenacity and sometimes unconventional approaches of individual researchers like Martinez, the institutional politics and public relations roles of figures like Hawass, and the immense public and academic pressure for high-profile discoveries.
The mystery of the tomb is therefore not solely about its physical location, but also about ongoing scientific debate, the painstaking interpretation of ambiguous evidence, and the personalities and collaborative or sometimes competitive dynamics within the field. It's a living, evolving puzzle.
It's truly fascinating to see how multiple lines of inquiry, some conventional, some quite unconventional, contribute to this grand puzzle. There are other speculations, too, though less supported by substantial evidence.
Like what?
Some historians hypothesize Cleopatra's loyal handmaidens might have secretly smuggled her body out of Alexandria to Taposiris Magna after Octavian's departure, but there's no ancient source support for that kind of clandestine operation.
Seems unlikely, yeah.
Another theory suggests she might be buried in a simple, unmarked rock-cut grave within a Macedonian Egyptian cemetery, reflecting her Greek lineage and perhaps her desire for a less ostentatious burial in the chaotic aftermath.
But the general scholarly consensus continues to lean very strongly towards Alexandria as the most probable site for the tomb, given the explicit historical accounts of its construction and her final days there within her palace complex.
So back to the water.
The question remains, is it truly lost to the sea, or is there another more hidden explanation? Or could Martinez be right after all?
But regardless of where it is or how it's eventually found, the profound significance of its discovery would be monumental, a truly earth-shattering archaeological event.
It absolutely would. The discovery of Antony and Cleopatra's tomb would be considered, without exaggeration, on a par with Howard Carter's discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun back in 1922.
That big.
Easily. It would ignite immense global fascination, captivating both the academic community and the general public in a way few other archaeological finds could. Imagine the documentaries, the headlines, the new wave of scholarship.
Beyond the immediate excitement, an intact tomb would offer unprecedented, invaluable insights into the final decades of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a period of immense political instability and profound cultural transition as Egypt faced absorption into the burgeoning Roman Empire.
A window into a lost world.
It's a chapter of history we largely see through Roman eyes, and this could provide a truly Egyptian perspective.
Precisely. It could shed entirely new light on the complex and often fraught relationship between Egypt, a millennia-old civilization, and the burgeoning Roman Republic, particularly the intimate dynamics of the Roman conquest and the subsequent provincialization of Egypt.
What else could we learn?
Any artifacts, texts, or inscriptions found within could reveal previously unknown details about the daily life, administrative practices, religious activities, and the complex economic realities of the Ptolemaic court, giving us a far richer tapestry of this era.
And this is where it truly gets to the so what factor, the ability to fundamentally rewrite history. Such a discovery holds the potential to unveil Cleopatra's true legacy, moving far beyond the simplistic narratives shaped by Roman propaganda.
The story Octavian wanted us to hear.
Exactly. The dominant historical narrative of Cleopatra is largely derived from Roman sources, heavily influenced by Octavian's calculated propaganda, which often portrayed her negatively as nothing more than a seductress, a foreign temptress who corrupted a great Roman.
An intact tomb, much like Tutankhamun's, would provide a direct, unfiltered, and crucially potentially unbiased source of information from her perspective. Funerary goods, personal belongings, inscriptions, and the very design of the tomb itself would reflect Cleopatra's own self-perception.
How she saw herself.
Her deeply held religious beliefs and her powerful role as a pharaoh, independent of those Roman biases. For instance, her strong identification with Isis could be vividly expressed through tomb iconography, showing us how she saw herself, not how Rome wanted us to see her.
So, such a discovery would fundamentally challenge and potentially rewrite existing historical narratives. It would allow scholars to move beyond the often misogynistic and politically motivated Roman portrayals, enabling a more nuanced and accurate understanding of Cleopatra.
As the ruler she actually was.
As a formidable, intelligent, multilingual, and profoundly politically astute ruler, this would be a powerful act of historical reclamation, providing a vital Egyptian perspective on a pivotal figure and era, finally giving her a voice beyond her enemies' words.
Furthermore, the tomb would offer unique insights into ancient Egyptian burial practices and royal tombs from a truly unique period. A royal tomb from the Ptolemaic era, especially Cleopatra's, could reveal unique syncretic burial practices, a blend that fused traditional ancient Egyptian customs with the Greek influences of her Macedonian descent.
Greek and Egyptian blended.
Reflecting her dual heritage and her adoption of Egyptian religious roles. It would be a rare and invaluable glimpse into an intact pharaonic tomb from a period where so many have been extensively looted, providing a wealth of information about funerary beliefs and rituals we currently lack.
The cultural and historical impact of such a find would be simply immense. It would undoubtedly rewrite history by providing new, tangible evidence, forcing us to reevaluate so much of what we thought we knew. It would generate new avenues for academic research for generations, inspire countless public exhibitions, captivating documentaries, and new works of popular culture, further cementing Cleopatra's enduring legacy as one of history's most iconic figures, but seen through a fresh lens.
And this leads us to a fascinating question for you, our listener, to consider. What other figures in history, you wonder, might have their stories fundamentally reevaluated by a new, incredible discovery? How much of what we think we know is simply the most popular or politically convenient narrative?
That's a truly profound thought. The mystery surrounding the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra is, as we've explored, a complex interplay of dramatic historical events, their passionate lives, their devastating deaths, Octavian's incredibly calculated actions, natural disasters, like the powerful earthquakes and tsunamis that submerged ancient Alexandria,
Nature and politics conspiring against discovery.
and the relentless, unforgiving passage of time, coupled with widespread looting and the agonizing loss of definitive records.
But the search for their final resting place is far from over. It's driven by dedicated archaeologists using increasingly advanced techniques, despite significant environmental and interpretive challenges and ongoing scholarly debates that push the boundaries of our understanding.
Hope remains.
The ongoing excavations at both the submerged sites of ancient Alexandria, led by Frank Gaudio, and the terrestrial site of Taposiris Magna, led by the tenacious Kathleen Martinez, coupled with remarkable advancements in archaeological technology like ground-penetrating radar and sophisticated geophysical surveys, offer persistent, tantalizing hope for a future discovery.
As Kathleen Martinez herself noted, with a wisdom that transcends the specific find, if we do not discover the tomb, we made major discoveries here, inside the temple and outside the temple.
The search itself yields knowledge.
Exactly. The quest to uncover this legendary tomb is not merely about finding a burial site. It is about filling critical gaps in our understanding of a pivotal moment in history, reevaluating the legacies of two of antiquity's most compelling figures, and understanding how history itself is written.
It also highlights the intrinsic value of the quest itself, the pursuit of knowledge, the sheer human curiosity. What else about history do we think we know that might just be waiting to be rewritten by a groundbreaking discovery?
Yeah.
What hidden truths are still out there, buried beneath layers of time, sediment, or even deliberate propaganda, just waiting for a tenacious researcher and the right technology to bring them to light?
A truly profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time as we continue to unpack the world's most fascinating mysteries, one deep dive at a time.